So here we are, episode 7. What have you learned? And there's going to be other topics, but I'm in the bathroom, so you get to learn what I learned in the bathroom. Okay, we'll slow down. First, you get to see Iron Man chest. In the bathroom, I learned that when I look at myself in the mirror, the internal part of myself has to smile for the external part of myself to smile. And there's so much that goes on with I saw a comment, it was like, why do people experience things they can't do anything about? Like, for example, if you were raised, this is just my case, with meat eaters as a meat eater, but then you grow to be like, I don't want to be doing that no more. Right? It's a complex and dynamic thing, but we're focusing on what we learned in the bathroom. So first, I'll just go through my routine, and you can be witness to it. Peroxide, cotton swab pad, whatever this is called. So this, after going to every designer store and saying, hey, what kind of products do you guys have? And then using the products, and then realizing that there's stuff in the products that I shouldn't put on my body. It was like, wait, there's something to this. So this peroxide stuff's really good because it's my toner, it's my cleanser, my hydrator. It does it all. It's that amazing. But you have to then know, like, this is what my eyebrows look like, and this is the highlights of my hair. And that's obviously peroxide. So then part 2 of this would be Q-tip. And you can look away if you want. Maybe you won't even see it, but it just goes straight in the right nostril. Then you flip it over. Get it wet a little bit more. I know there's way more efficient ways to be doing what I'm doing, but for right now, we're just teaching you what I learned. Okay, 1, 2, and then of course there's the ears, but you know, everyone's got their own way of cleaning their ears. There's this guy on YouTube that goes and gets his ear cleaned. This technique that they like probe his ear and stuff, and it's just like, what is going on? But I mean, it works for him. So what I learned is that this peroxide stuff is this. I mean, if you know anything about chemistry or science, hydrogen is very good for the body in every which way. So in regard to the benefits you get from it, well, it's a net positive thing for you to be using in your life. And what I learned was that all these things that women put on their face, it's like, is it true that the way that they treat me is influenced by the stuff that they put on their body? And that's why I dove into it, because I was like, okay, I gotta walk it so that I could talk it. And then ultimately it was, wait, there's something to it, because all of these, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different perfume scents. And it's like, if that's going in your body, on your body, and then in your body, your endocrine system is being disrupted, which means that you won't be able to monitor or process your hormones correctly, which means that there's an imbalance, which ultimately means that the self, the person is going to be moody. And it became the whole thing because I was able to feel it but control it. But then when I look at other people, and it's like, oh, I see why I'm being treated differently. Because the second that I cleared my own endocrine system and it wasn't disrupted, I started to experience life completely differently. And so it gave me a sense of humility, but then also a sense of patience, because as I decided to have those things within myself, I resonated with the fact that those people deserve those things as a response, not as the immediate reaction of like, oh, we're going to have a hissy fit kind of a fight, or like we're just going to be brother and sister type arguments. Like I don't deserve that in my life. So then for example, like the hair, you're like, oh, how do you maintain the hair? Well, honestly, I just washed my hair last night. But yesterday, I used this stuff from Purple Rain Lavender. It's called Eau Bleu. It's a hydrosol. And I've been using this stuff for about a year. And the best part about this stuff is that I don't have to be using what other people use. So there's this stuff that people use, and it says that it does the detangling. You could use it when you're straightening your hair. Helps restore dry hair, control frizz, moisturizes, adds shines, helps prevent split ends, nourishes, creates silkiness, and softens. Well, let me just go from 10 down to 1. Anytime I went to the barbershop, the lady was like, hey, you got some really thick hair. So I think that's more of a genetic thing. But then in terms of the silkiness, I'd say that 99% of that, and it goes along with everything I'm about to say, has to do with your endocrine system and what your blood is doing. So what any of that means is that the health of my hair, when I stopped drinking coffee, no split ends. Because the acidity of my blood was removed and it became more alkaline, which ultimately meant that it was benefiting my body because anytime I was out in public, I was hydrated. And that influences your hair because then it shines, because then it's healthy and it's moisturized. But again, seeing last night, I was like, or yesterday when I went out in public, I was like, my hair, I know that I need to wash it. So what I did was I put this in, and this controls the frizz, this controls the knots, this controls all of it. And on top of that, it lowers your blood pressure, inflammation, helps you sleep, all these great things. And I was like, does this do that? I mean, you're claiming all these benefits, but I don't have to have 99 different ingredients if I could just have 2. That's lavender and water. And so it was fascinating to me because I realized, like, wait, I could spend money on products. I could rightfully give people my money, the money that I generated. And I know that the benefit I get is so universal that there's no placebo to it. And I tested it. I was like, okay, can I have a control group, myself, and then people who just don't use it? And it works. The control group was being influenced as a non-placebo. And it's so fascinating to me, beyond anything that I could describe, because you just got to experience it. We'll go with skin, because I got to put, well, first we'll go with deodorant. Now, this is the one where it's like, as much as I like using this stuff, it's got ingredients that I can't pronounce. There's a lot of ingredients, and then I know that really I could just use 2 ingredients, if not just 1 ingredient, which is plastic free, really. So if I'm out just like talking to people or driving around, like, this stuff is fine. But then the second that we introduce any kind of sweat activity or being on the field, it takes like 20 minutes for it to go away. I know that there's a super strength version of this. And then I also know that there's crystal, all that kind of stuff. So something I learned there is that the aluminium is a complete, like, I wouldn't give it to my own family, put it that way. And again, that's part of the practice where it's like, there was a point where I was using it for literally no reason other than the fact that it worked, but was it working equating to the essential sacrifice that was happening of my body? And I was like, no, like, that's why I stopped using all the lotions and I use this. I was at the grocery store and the lady was like, your skin is glowing. Like, how did you do that? And I was like, well, in your healthcare aisle, you got this stuff called coconut oil. Go use that. And then she used it. And the next time I saw her, she was like, you're so right. And then eventually it became this whole thing about, where can I get it? I know this is plastic, but like, where else can you get 2.5 liters worth of it? Right? So this then adds to the whole thing about hydration and the whole thing about hair and the whole thing about endocrine systems and the body's alkalinity. Because what I realized was that if I use this coconut oil, I know that it's going to get on my clothes. And that's something I learned is like, you have to be okay with certain trade-offs, granted the fact that if I go to any country in the world, they're going to have cold-pressed coconut oil, that's for sure. They're going to have essential oils, that's for sure. They're going to have hydrogen peroxide, that's for sure. And so it became super simple because I didn't have to lug around or worry about any of these things when I travel, because it's not something I want to do. I just want to just show up and just interact. And so what this has taught me and what I learned is that I started talking about like, well, no, you kind of like live your life and you don't really know why you consume certain food groups. And it's like, well, you know what, if I stop eating that, then what are the benefits of that action, of the stopping? And so what I was able to learn was that the more alkaline you can get your body, I don't get sunburned. I don't have the hanging nails. I don't have chapped lips. And this is the beginning of the second year that I used the coconut oil. The only reason I got to ever using that was because I was at one of those like crystal shops, and it said, it was like, hey, I sell this coconut oil stuff and it smells like strawberry limeade. You want to try some? And I was like, okay, I get the premise of using the coconut oil, and the scent, as you know, it is what it is. And I was like, well, what do you use it for? And she's like, well, put it on your hands. And it was like something I'd never felt before. And she's like, well, yeah, it's great in bed too. And I was like, oh, no, that's something I might have to remember. And then ultimately it was like, okay, well, if this is essentially water for my skin and all I have to do is use it every day, then what happens? Well, this is the healthiest skin I've ever had. But then again, it also to do with the diet and the food I eat, because I stopped eating, like, for example, breakouts and acne. I have this guy and then this guy. These are the only two I've had in like a year. But that's also because I ate fried food. So like that's the thing, is I've had to forego eating processed or fried foods. Literally mostly a raw diet, as much as I can. And as minimal carbs as possible. And so you're sitting there and you're like, oh, well, the food group's this and, you know, daily intake of that. And I'm just sitting there saying like, sir or ma'am, do you know how protein works and what amino acids are? And then I invite you to go in that rabbit hole, because of course I can tell you that essentially protein is a pseudo name for an amino acid, because an amino acid is actually more beneficial and more auxiliary for your body, considering the fact that there are more applications for an amino acid than there are for proteins. And if you go and learn about that, then that's great. And if you want to just take my word for it, then I really would want you to challenge my word, because you should be skeptical of the things that I'm telling you, because you should go about it, because this is what I did. I heard something from somebody and I said, okay, does that work? And then I went my own way about it, only saying what they told me. Found my own version of science, found my own way of coming to my own conclusion. And I realized, like, okay. At the end, well, there really is no end, but at some point I was like, okay, is this often, how often is this working? Oh, it's just about 99% or 100% of the time. I was like, oh, I'm learning. Okay, what else do we do? I gotta do my legs. This is the best part about this, is that you are on there. Can you even see any of this? Fascinating. So, yeah, this coconut oil stuff. I was really what I learned more is that the only way you can find something out is if you look for it. Just like with music, like how do you find new music if you aren't looking for it? And of course, you could be in like a random mall and you're like, oh, I like that song, right? But that's also like an unconscious, subconscious thing of you being like, oh, I'm tired of the music I'm listening to, or like maybe you're going through a interpersonal change in your life, and that's just a straight up theme. Like And that's something that just resonates with the whole aspect of change. Is like me, for example, um, probably like the last new moon. We're in a full moon today, so you can count how many days that is. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna listen to new music, and it's basically an alter ego, but it's also definitely just your body getting like a system break, which is good. And the reason that those are important is so that you have literally the ability to have a personal sense of stopping, smelling the roses, and then saying, okay, we're going to go in this direction, or this is the mode or the feeling that we're going to have going forward. And so this is part of the stuff I learned in a bathroom. Because if there was a foundation to it, it'd have to do with your thoughts. And of course, everything I'm saying is like, oh, but then there's these people and they're doing that thing and they're like this beautiful and all this other stuff. But having not done it myself, it's like I understand how that works. But out of all the things, money aside, convenience and reliability aside, I'm saying this from the position of if I'm a father and there was someone in front of me who literally didn't know any better, someone younger than me, and I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to tell you because I decided to learn these things so that you could either have a different ground level base zero or you could just straight up at the face of it have more information to make your own decision because I can't make the decision for you. But having had experienced how people treat me based off of the decisions that they make and the fact that they wouldn't change because they don't feel like learning about what they're doing, the best thing that I can do is have the example to tell you about it so that you can decide whether you want split ends and dry skin and a dehydrated body and moodiness and the inability to control what you eat and inflammation. Because essentially at that point, if we're looking at it objectively, like, are you being the best version of yourself? A. B. Are you able to harness and garner your gifts that you've been given so that you could then be applying those to then be yourself in society and then have people benefit from you being the best version of yourself? That's where this is coming from. That's the intention of all of it. Because the purpose really is that if you can get out of your own way, which is the biggest life lesson that I've had to learn, is like, okay, if by doing something just to feel another thing, like for example, if wearing the cologne that had my name on it just so that other people could compliment me, or just so that it would mask a smell, which is this is all a means to an end. Was that worth it? Because the reality is no. Because the end result wasn't favorable to the life that I was aiming to live. So then what I realized was like, okay, if we tone it down and we just find happiness just because we feel like being happy. And versions of happiness can also include the ease of life, freedom, essentially not having to be in a doctor's office, being around people who aren't moody or controlled by their gluttony. All of these things, it was like, you know what kind of a life does that offer? Oh, that's a happy life, but you have to choose to be happy to then resonate with that life. And then it became this whole thing about, okay, I'm gonna do it. And along the way, happiness just like starts revealing itself to you. And then you sit there with like, that's another thing that I learned is like I was holding on to all these things, and it was like playing catch with straws, essentially. Just like, oh no, I don't want to let that one go because I won't be able to drink out of that cup. But then I realized, like, do I want to be sitting there with all these things that don't work? I mean, they work for a certain extent, but if I keep drinking out of those cups and depriving my body of being a body, and instead of just being like a bank account, well, let me rephrase that. If I keep treating my body like I don't value it the way that I do today, then there's these prolonged things that are going to happen that aren't going to benefit me. But I'd rather have the prolonged things that add to the bank account, that generate good feelings and stuff like that. So here I am. Here we are. Should probably put my clothes on at this point. But anyways, the whole point in all that was so that you can realize, like, wait, yes, you do have a choice. And if I'm somebody who is essentially learning how to figure these things out so that I can establish happiness just so that I could be happy, then I've gone out of my own way because now my hands are free. I've let go of all the things that didn't work for me or didn't serve me so that I could go and literally have my hands be open to pick up new things. Because how can you pick up new things if you're clenching on to all the old stuff? So then I got to a point where I started picking up all these new things and adding them to my tool belt, so that now I'm comfortable with my tool belt, and everywhere that I go, I have my hands open, I have my tools on my belt, and everything is just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. All the good stuff, all the stuff that is actually, like even money, is just like whoosh, whoosh. It's like, now it's a lot more simple because I don't have to worry about the one thing I don't worry about anymore is like the whole suffering thing. Because one of the biggest things I learned was that, well, there's three things that I learned. The first one was we suffer so much more in our own heads than we would in the real world, and it reflects like all the doubt and the fear and the guilt and all that stuff. It's all there, but it doesn't have to be. Because another thing I learned was that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Because all this stuff too, it's like this is gonna completely like remove everything you've ever known to be real and true by doing this stuff. What any of that means is like I was at a point where I physically was the most fit and strongest I'd ever been in my life. But I couldn't think for myself. I was relying on external gratification, letting other people tell me what they thought was right for my life. Because the last thing I thought was like a really important life lesson that I learned was everything that's popular is not important. And everything that's important is not popular. And so what any of this means, why I'm saying this, is because who are you if you don't think for yourself? Who is then thinking for you? Like who's controlling who you're friends with? Who's controlling the things you call fun? Who's controlling how many times you can go on vacation? Who's controlling the kind of food you eat? Is that you? Thanks, culture. Stuff works. And so really, if there was a quality to everything I've been saying, 6 years ago there was a disease, or some people call it imbalance. But now, like for 25 minutes and 44 seconds, was just straight stream of consciousness. I used to be the guy that stuttered, cracked his voice. I could go into more. But the whole like chakra thing, there might be a little something to it. And again, it's like going back to that comment that I saw. Maybe I should put it up and then we can round off there. It was in a Brian Withers video. Comment was, Wobe2 said, I've been watching your content for a while, and there's just two things which I can't yet wrap my head around, but I would really like to. In order to change your life, you need to change your beliefs. In order to change your beliefs, you need to focus positively. You mentioned a few beliefs that are not beneficial to receiving the life that is set up for you. One that stood out to me was the belief that life is unfair, and that the other was, I cannot do bad things. I absolutely agree, but these beliefs will not benefit you in any way. But I still can't stop thinking about a few exceptions where I feel like if someone is actually unfair, someone born in captivity or not experiencing any freedom their whole life, did they really attract this to themselves? Or powerful world leaders who have made terrible decisions leading to millions dying horribly. Is that really not bad? I also had an unbelievable, positive, and nice aunt who had recently passed away because of cancer. Did she really attract this to herself? Choosing not to believe that life is unfair and that you cannot do bad things has helped me. But sometimes I just wonder if this is really universally applicable, and I'm curious to what you think about this. Well, anyways, I'm sending you much love. To which Brian responded and said, thank you for your comment. It's my pleasure to share this knowledge. Great question. They require a more in-depth answer to understand them, which would take a very long response. What I will say is that this is an energy universe, and we all are energy beings, and there is a law of attraction picking up our energy and giving back what matches, both collectively and individually. Also, we choose where we come into the planet, and there is a reason for that too. There is a reason, an explanation for everything, and as well as solution. And it would be nice when this knowledge that tells us how life actually works gets taught to us as us inhabitants that come here to live. So odd, we come here to live a magnificent life in all ways and not taught how it works. Well, that is why I wrote my book. And the book he wrote is called The Book of Life. It would give you all of these answers and more. You could listen through the videos in which I touch on most topics, and they are pieces out of the book. I know those things from traditional beliefs don't seem fair, but the biggest reason they happen is our lack of education on this topic. They all could be avoided if we had this education. So that was from the comment on the video posted on March the 11th, 2025, with the video titled The Key to Positive Focus. And I'll write off by saying this, because this is something I couldn't control growing up, something I couldn't control at all. I'm beyond worrying about it at this point. It's just more about like the things that it's taught me and how to essentially embrace myself. Like maybe for you it's just like it is what it is, but Like, I don't know, it's like birth defects or anything having to do with quite literally things you have no control over, especially if you're just anything younger than I'm anything younger than I'm 24. So anything younger than 24. It's such a fascinating thing. Because it's like, again, I've learned so much about this and I could keep going about it. But we'll just leave it there. Just so that you could think about that. Because freedom. Take care. All the best.